Welcome to the MVC section or the Model View Controller section of our Flutter course. In this part, we are going to dive deep into one of the most popular software architectural patterns, MVC. Whether you're a beginner or an experienced developer, understanding MVC is crucial for building efficient and scalable applications in Flutter. So, let's get started. Now, the first question is obviously what is MVC? The model view controller pattern is a way to separate concerns in your applications. It divides the application into three interconnected components: the model, the view, and the controller. This separation helps in maintaining or managing complex applications as you can focus on the aspects of the implication at one time. So basically, you're focusing on one thing at a time, and that makes it easier to manage. All right, and that's what MVC does. Like that's what any architectural pattern does. It also makes the application more scalable and maintainable. But at the same time, I just wanted to like point this one out that MVVM design pattern is the most scalable according to my experience. All right. So first, let's talk about the model. The model represents the data or the business logic of your application. It's responsible for fetching, storing, manipulating data. In a Flutter app, your model would typically interact with a database or a network service to retrieve data. It's the backbone of your application, containing the rules and functions that define how your app behaves. And also, in a simpler way, let me just tell you this that basically the models are going to contain all the objects and all the necessary calculations to convert or structure the data coming from the server. All right, and so that's the basics of it, and you're going to get to know about how the models work in a better way in the later part of the Flutter networking session. I'm like still building it, so yeah, it's gonna be over soon, and you're gonna be able to see like how exactly the models work, like what are they, and like what could you possibly do with it, right? So in general terms, it's basically just the data, right? Handles the data and just like does some calculations with the data. It's as simple as that. All right. So the next we have the view. This view is all about the UI and presentation. It displays data to the user and handles user interactions. In Flutter, this is where your widgets come into play. The view is what your users see and interact with. It's your app's interface. So basically, whatever the user sees on the screen, it's the like all those components are stored in the view file. All right. So I mean, later on, I'm going to be doing the classic Flutter counter app that comes with the default boilerplate. All right. So we're going to be doing that in MVC, and then you're going to be able to see that yeah, we might be writing more code, but at the same time, our code is getting a bit clearer. It's more understandable and it's highly maintainable. And finally, the controller as a, acts as a mediator between model and the view. It handles the user input from the view, processes it, and returns the output to the display. In Flutter, the controller is where you write the logic that connects your UI to your business logic. Understanding these components is effectively implementing the MVC pattern in your Flutter apps. But how do these components interact with each other? Let's dive deep. All right. Implementing MVC in Flutter is an exciting journey. Flutter's reactive framework aligns well with the MVC pattern, making it one of the great choices for your application. Let's break it down on how you can implement MVC in your Flutter app. To start with, you define your model. All right, it's a good practice to keep your model class clean and fully so and like solely focused on the data and business logic, some business logic, and avoid including any UI code on your model. I mean, that's obviously the first and foremost thing which you, need to do. Don't put any UI stuff over there, right? Now, for instance, if you're creating a to-do list, your model would manage tasks, including like adding, deleting, and editing them. But at the same time, you could also have a different approach to it. Like for example, uh, no, you can do this these as well. The MVC and MVVM is slightly a bit different. I was actually getting a bit confused with the MVC and MVVM. Anyways, let's move on. Let's move over. Next, next in Vue, in Flutter, this is where you shine your widget tree, right? Your view should be dumb in the sense that it does not contain any business logic. It should only be concerned with presenting the data. Use stateless or stateful to build your UI or any other state management tactics. And remember, the view should only have the data to display, that is to be displayed to the user. All right, and it should send some actions to the controller, and then the controller is gonna handle everything else. So next comes the controller. The controller in Flutter can be a class where you write the methods to handle user inputs. Right. These methods will update the model and also inform the view to update itself. You can see Flutter state management. Flutter's like you can use the Flutter state management to update the view when your model changes. I mean, yeah, that's basically uh, some of the things which you can do. Now let's talk about yeah. So I forgot to like change the slide. So yeah, it looks something like this. Now finally, let's talk about the pros and cons of MVC. Now separation of concern. Let's talk about the pros. MVC provides a clean separation between the business logic, the UI, and the control logic. This separation makes your code more modular, easier to maintain, and scalable. Second is easier testing. With a clear separation, you can independently test different parts of your application, leading to more reliable code. Now, improved organization, obviously, it's just like the basic thing. Uh, MVC naturally leads to well organized project structures, which is particularly beneficial for large scale projects or when working in teams. Now, the cons. So the first one is like learning curve. For newcomers, understanding and implementing MVC might be a bit challenging, but it's not that hard. And at the same time, I'm a big fan of MVVM. So yeah, MVVM is really easy. I'm gonna be teaching MVVM in detail later in the course. So don't worry about that. Now overhead. Uh, MVC might be an overkill for smaller application or simpler apps where such a level of abstraction isn't necessary. Like for example, the Flutter counter app. I mean, we don't need the MVC architecture to like build that simple thing, right? But I just wanted to like show you how we can do the MVC. So that's why we're gonna be like doing a small demo later on. Now, the third con is complexity in state management. Managing states between the view and the model through the controller can get complex, especially in large apps with a lot of dynamic content. Now let's bring this to a real life. Now let's bring this. Now let's bring this to life with a real world application. Imagine we're building a weather app in Flutter using MVC, and there is one thing which I have seen: all the courses in the entire world which is related to Flutter, like which is completely related to Flutter, and like it has the entire course on Flutter. Every single one of them has a weather app. So I guess we might also need to add a weather app soon. I was thinking of going like creating an entirely different application for showing the networkings and all, but I don't know why is that part like so much common like why is this weather app so much common throughout all the courses in Flutter? I'm I'm just not sure why that is, but it is what it is. So I'm gonna be like adding weather a small weather app, not the very complex ones. I'm just going to be like creating a small weather app, and also I'm going to be creating another app which is going to show the proper use, like the proper showcase of JSON handling. Right, but that's for later on. Anyways, so yeah, let's think of a weather app, and we are building it using MVC. So our model will manage the weather data, fetching it from an API. Then the view will display the data, thinking of a beautiful design with temperature, weather icons, etc. The controller will handle user inputs like city selection and update the model accordingly. When the model fetches some new data, the view updates to show the latest weather. In this scenario, you can see how MVC helps keep concerns separate and makes the app easier to maintain and scale. You can independently update the UI without touching the business logic and vice versa. That's the wrap for MVC section. Remember, understanding MVC and implementing MVC in Flutter will not only enhance your app structure but also improve your overall development process. And in the next video, we're gonna be like creating the small counter application using MVC. So, all right then, happy coding.